What's up, Warriors, and welcome to another episode of the Mental Health Movement podcast, Voice for the Voiceless. I am your host, Chris. Before we get started with today's podcast, I just kind of wanted to give a shout out to a former host of a podcast I used to be on. I got word that he recently passed away. If it wasn't for being on that podcast, I probably wouldn't be on this journey and have the confidence that I have to do these podcasts. So, William, until we meet again, man, rest in power. And to all my audience, remember to check up on your friends. It's life is too short to have grudges with people. Life is too short to not talk to the people that help pave the way for what you're doing today. So, with that being said, today's special guest is Tara Sundem. Tara, how you doing?
Good. How are you?
I'm doing good.
Thank you for your time, and also I'm sorry for your loss.
Thank you so much. I really appreciate that. You can put your camera on too if you want. If not, no worries at all. So kind of wanted to start with your journey because I was doing a little research on everything that you cover, and I think it's pretty incredible to do the things that you're doing with the programs that you have. So tell me about your journey in this field. What inspired the creation of the Hushabye Nursery?
Yeah, I'm a neonatal nurse practitioner by real job, and so I've only taken care of babies for almost 30 years, over 30 years. And 2015, we started seeing more babies come into our neonatal intensive care unit withdrawing. And at that time, they were with us at least for a month, if not longer. And most of the time, they were without their parents. Um, I ended up, well, my co-founder and I were like, oh, I think we can do something very similar to what's done in West Virginia, Lily's Place. They took the babies out of the neonatal intensive care unit into the Lily's Place, which was a, I think, 8-bed unit at that time, and with a quiet, dark environment. And they found that, gosh, you do that, babies actually go through the withdrawal process easier. And when you think about it, when I had one mom really dumbed down withdrawal for me, saying, it's the worst flu and migraine times 100. And when
Mm,
she did that, I was like, that's exactly what we see in babies. You know, tummy aches, they can't sleep, they're sweaty, they're cold, they're on and off. It's horrific to watch them. And we put them in the neonatal intensive care unit because that's where we take care of sick babies. That's just where what we do. Well, that was created for babies that are as big as a dollar bill. So babies that can't breathe or have heart issues, that's what that was created for. So of course you need bright lights. You need to be able to see what's going on. You have to have monitors to make sure that their heart's still beating and they're breathing okay. Um, but for babies that are withdrawing, this is a completely like new lane that never was a priority in the neonatal intensive care unit. A lot because of stigma, us just not seeing it that often or not being aware of it. But in 2015, it became very apparent. I ended up moving from one of my big neonatal intensive care unit, almost 100 beds, and I needed to move closer to my family to be with my boys. They were in school, and it just needed to be done. So I moved to a hospital that's probably about 5 miles from my house, and 6-bed unit, just, you don't take care of sick babies. And at any given time, we had 5 to 6 babies withdrawing. And I was like, what is happening in my part of town? I mean, that should be downtown Phoenix. That should not be my little suburb. And I ended up calling over to my old unit and asking my peers, I'm like, how many babies do you have withdrawing? And they're like, I don't know. And I'm like, no, I mean, can you like really look, go count? And they come back and when they're like, we have a dozen. I'm like, we have a you have a dozen babies there that are withdrawing. They're like, yeah, who knew? And you have different providers in a 100-bed unit. You figure if you had 8 providers, everyone had 2 babies that were withdrawing, or 1 to 2. So we didn't think that it was a big deal until you went, you have how many? And I had five. So that really opened our eyes. And then slowly but surely, I learned about adverse childhood experiences, learned that, gosh, babies do better when their parents are around and when their parents are healthy. And so I taught myself a lot about behavioral health in the neonatal land and medical field. We don't learn about behavioral health. We call a psychiatrist or a specialist to come in and do a consult. We don't deal with that. And unfortunately, we're all realizing that, boy, if we could fix mental health, maybe we wouldn't have these physical health issues.
Right.
And that's what got us started. I said, oh, let's try doing what Lily's Place did, and then learning about how important the parents were. We really expanded what Lily's Place did to make sure that babies had one-to-one caregivers, meaning if I have 12 babies, I have 12 caregivers.
Right.
Somebody can hold them 24/7. And then we brought in the behavioral health component. So we have standard outpatient behavioral health for the moms and dads that we start prenatally and we continue as long as they will have us. So after they deliver and when they go home, we're still following some babies they're in kindergarten now.
Right.
And so it's just like whatever their parents need, if they need community, we're that community. And what we find is now those families that end up getting well, maybe jumping on our groups and they end up mentoring the families that are where they were at the very beginning. It's kind of it's a really cool thing.
Yeah. Do you guys ever have you guys ever collaborated with Lily's Place at all?
Um, we're trying to help them do the outpatient program that we're doing.
Oh,
Yeah,
wow.
yeah.
That's awesome.
So they're doing that. They've expanded a little bit to different areas, kind of going a little bit different way, but every state child welfare is different, health department's different. And for them, it was like, okay, so they're veering off doing something more with child welfare right now. But to see that we're doing very similar work, um, trying to just make a difference and
Yeah.
realizing that number one, it's not hard to be kind.
Right.
And that kindness and being non-judgmental is what heals families.
Absolutely. And it's crazy that the people that inspire us, we end up, somehow inspiring them to do more and, just kind of pushing them to run alongside with you. And going back to the parents situation with some of the babies that are left there, is that by them giving the baby up, or how does a baby end up without the parents in that kind of care?
How do they end up with parents in our care or without their
Well,
parents?
without the parents, like
Without their
you
parents,
said.
so yeah, so Lily's Place,
Mm.
when they first started, the parents actually had to, I don't think I'm wrong about this, but I believe they had to like sign their rights,
Yeah,
say that,
that's what I
and
was
it
asking.
was and it was child welfare that
Okay.
had custody, and they ended up transferring. Here in Arizona, we don't, that decision usually is not made until day of discharge. So usually our child welfare is doing an investigation. We're really able to work with the family and mend a lot of relationships, grandparents that have had to do tough love because, they've been stolen for, they're dangerous when they're under the influence. I understand that. But when we're able to get families engaged in treatment after they've had their baby or when they find out they're pregnant, it's a different person. And
Yeah.
we're a completely different treatment model, meeting families where they're at. And initially, the focus is let's help you parent and let's help you parent safely. And then as we're doing that, then they're like, okay, so you're saying if I have to parent safely, I have to get well. And it's like, yep, you do. But we don't push that recovery on them. We just go, you know what? You want to know how to put a diaper on? Let's teach you how to put a diaper on. Okay, how do you feed them? Yes, you can feed them. Can you breastfeed? Well, we have to get you well to breastfeed. Let's work on that. And so slowly but surely, every person has a different journey, but we just go, okay, you're up for that? Let's go. If we're not going to pause or hesitate in saying, say a mom right now tells someone in my team right now that she's really ready for treatment. You have to do that in the next 2 hours. You will have lost your momentum by tomorrow morning. That's what my team's able to do. And we have, community partners that we're able to just outreach and be like, this is what she's open to. And we know most of our community partners like the nuances of it. Like we have one recovery center, you don't get your phone for a year. So if a mom doesn't know she doesn't get her phone for a year and she goes and does the intake process and finds out at the end, like, I don't get my phone for a year. Well, that totally, we just did all of the intake, which is very triggering, and led her in the wrong way. And so, us being experts in what our community partners do, we're able to do warm handoffs and still be able to work together because nobody does what we do. And so it's not like a conflict. It's you're just adding on. We're just wrapping around the family with whatever they need.
I want to underline something really powerful here. And, you mentioned it early on of, just not having any judgment in all these situations, right? I grew up in a family full of addicts. I've been to recovery meetings with my parents, and I feel when it comes to situations like this, you kind of have to avoid that judgment completely because you don't know everybody's situation. And I feel that in today's society of just getting that fast information and, social media being as heavy and influential as it is, it's so easy for addicts to stay in that mindset because people on one side of the fence will be like, oh, you're doing nothing wrong. That person's wrong and all the advice they're giving you. Then you got the other fence, but you guys are just trying to be as understanding in their situation. And I feel that's really powerful because, like you said, kindness goes a long way. Just asking somebody how they're doing or just be like, hey, I noticed you're struggling. How can I help you do better?
Yep.
And I feel that's one of the most important parts because I have friends, really good friends who are in recovery or have been recovered for 25 years and they struggle still. It's like I almost slip and I don't because I remember I didn't like that person back then. And when it comes to like kids, like I in a million years never thought there would be babies suffering like that. And you just saying the number when you guys were first starting off just made my jaw drop because it's like how do you even get there? Like that's just crazy to me.
Yeah. Yeah. And when someone's struggling, I love that you call it struggling because that's what we call it. I usually, if there's, we call it oopsies, lapses in recovery. Because at Hushabye, we really try to help our clients understand that they have a brain disease and that, you know, an oopsie, I go on a diet a lot and I have an oopsie all the time. And I know that that's, dismissing it a little bit, but not if you're, have diabetes and it isn't. And so really trying to take away the shame from our clients to know that you are the best parent for this baby. That is it. You are number one. We just have to get you well so that you're able to be able to parent safely. I think that is just those words make a difference. When you say, how are you doing? Our very first word by all of my staff, if they meet a client, the very first word is congratulations. I tell them, I'm like, your second word, if you're working with the babies, is you tell that mom, you find something cute on that baby if it's the left earlobe, that earlobe is adorable. Um, because we just need to build them up. And again, being kind. If kindness heals, then why would we not do it? People struggle all the time. And I'm not the one to judge. And when I hear like the journeys that my families have endured, I'm most of the time I'm like, I can't believe you're here, but thank
Yeah,
goodness you're here.
yeah. And I've watched addiction destroy families, but I've also, in the same sentence, I have watched the people surrounding that addict treating them like they're next to nothing. And, I believe it's important to have that conversation that some people just don't want to get well. And that's just the reality of the situation.
Mhm.
But they are not any less of a human being because they don't want to get better. Some of those people are so sick to the point of they don't know anything else. Like you said, these babies are starting out from those decisions from those parents. So it's like the understanding goes a long way, but it also needs to come with boundaries too.
Yeah. Yep. Yeah, absolutely. And I tell families, like say a grandma, and I always am like, you can do what you can do, but let us do what we do. And we're going to be there, and you slowly but surely, have to gain trust. It's not like you automatically trust them, but I've also had clients that go, okay, so now grandma and grandpa are very involved and they want to be involved, but I don't trust them, and I'm like, this is a two-way street. And I always, because I feel guilty going, okay, but all of the things were about me, but they felt abandoned, they felt all of these things. And I'm like, those are true feelings. That's how you feel. And so it does take time to heal. And I would tell them to give themselves grace and give others grace.
Absolutely. And I used to volunteer for a crisis text line, and one of my very, very first conversations was with a minor. And that was really hard because I was that minor at one point in my life where I was struggling without the resources that we have.
Yeah.
And I obviously you're limited to what you can say. You can't make those conversations super personal because it could be triggering. Um, but I feel that it's important to, like you said, give people grace because that's something that this entire world is missing is giving others grace and understanding and giving ourselves grace too,
Yeah.
because
Yep.
we are
Yep.
so harsh on ourselves.
Yep. Yeah. Well, and I think like I am not proud of this and I laugh, but it was kind of an eye opener because I sit there and go, I'm not judgmental. And my family, I teach them like what's appropriate, what's not appropriate, what are the right words, whatever. And we were talking about something, and all of a sudden I'm like, oh my gosh, he's a druggie. And I like was like, where did that come from
Yeah,
out of my mouth? And this is what I do all the time. And so I sit there and go, okay, my unconscious bias obviously still there. And my boys, like their jaws dropped, going, what did you say? I'm like, I don't know. And so I think giving ourselves grace of, you know, we're we're not always going to say the right words.
right.
We're not always going to know the right words,
Hmm.
but there's no reason that we can't be willing to have open minds to go, okay, but tell me then what is an offensive?
Yeah,
What is the appropriate opiate use disorder versus what's the appropriate diagnosis? Um, I feel like addiction has kind of like the F word. It's the big A word. So really using the diagnosis makes a difference and it takes away the stigma, at least to the clients, them understanding that this is the disease they have. Like if they had diabetes, we would talk about diabetes.
right.
Oh,
And I feel the hardest part is to always staying on, like you said, that unconscious bias. And I find myself doing the same thing sometimes too, where I try to be understanding, but then it's just kind of like you got to be really honest sometimes. But at the same time, it's like maybe that wasn't the best response, but I felt it in my heart, and I know I could have worded it differently.
Mhm.
Um, I'm estranged from my mother, so I have a very harsh relationship with her. Um, Sometimes the things that I say to her, it's like, wow, yeah, that was really thought out, and it'll just come out, and those boundaries will be firm and they'll be set. Then other times, not thought out, anger, and just vomit. And
Yep.
again, we're human beings. We shouldn't have to be expected to stay on all the time. And I think it's important that we acknowledge that we shouldn't have to stay on all the time.
Yeah. Yeah. I
Um,
think that's totally it. And if you I think also admitting, being willing to go, I'm so sorry. That was, I don't know where that came from. And, obviously I still have that guilt in my head. I just told
right.
your
Yeah.
whole podcast, all your people, what happened. But you, we all, we don't always make great choices. We don't always know what's coming out of our mouth. We should think about it, but it doesn't always come out right. So, yeah, yeah.
So can you share a memorable experience from your time working with babies affected by I'll just say NAS just to make it easier.
Yeah, yeah. I would say for me, can I say mom and baby,
Yeah,
the whole
yeah.
experience? So we had a mom and dad that grandma saw us on some news show, and she called us from Chicago and was like, my son and baby mama are due any day now. How do I get them connected with you? And I was like, okay, well, we were like 4 months in starting, and I'm like, this is great, we're gonna try. And they were homeless, struggling with fentanyl use and many other substances. And Dad always said we just hustled. I'm like, yep, you just hustled. That's to survive. And 2 days later, they end up delivering their baby. Grandma gets hold of us. We end up getting baby to Hushabye, which was a surprise how easy it was because it's not always that easy. And this was mom's for fourth baby, fourth baby. Her other three were rights were severed. Um, she had no contact with them. So baby comes, baby really was probably my second most impacted baby I've ever taken care of in 30 years. I mean, we tried everything and we ended up having to give um, medication to help him get through. He was impacted. But mom and dad came and they stayed. They ate. I've always said I've never seen a mom ever eat as much food in my life. I mean, she could just put it away. And the first 3 days, they were not engaged, like never even like looked at baby. They would
Wow.
go get food, go outside, come back in, go to bed, and just the same thing. And we're all like, geez, she is not engaged at all. At all. Like wouldn't even just did not get the best nap. And I was like, you guys, let's just meet them where they're at, whatever they need. And on the third night, in the middle of the night, their little man woke up, and the nurses, quickly jump in to go and hold him, and his cry stopped. And they're like, okay, he doesn't ever stop crying by himself. Um, and when they went in the room, mom's in there changing his diaper. Gave him his pacifier, changed his diaper, and she looks up and they're like, are you okay? She's like, yeah, fine. Um, they end up giving her the bottle. She feeds him. He wouldn't eat before, but for her, totally ate. The next morning, I get a message from the nurses going, okay, can you tell that mom to come back every day? Because he responded to her. They're like, that was the best night that he has had. And she held him and he was just calm and tolerated things. And so that next day I was actually being the provider, and I was talking to mom and I was like, I'm so proud of you. And she's like, what? And she gets tears in her eyes and she's like, why are you proud of me? And I'm like, you're like the only one that has the knack with your little man. I go, that shouldn't surprise me. I'm like, but to see him so comfortable with you. And she starts, tearing a little bit. And I said, so could you not do what you didn't do yesterday today? And she like looks at me and laughs. And I'm like, I go, you know what I mean? I'm like, you totally know. And she goes, well, yeah, I can do that. And she will tell you to this day, she's had one oopsie, um, from that. Fast forward in that same stay, uh, baby's getting ready to be discharged. Mom and dad needed to go to residential treatment. They both agreed to go to residential. Um, uh, Mom asks if she can meet foster mom, and I said, "Oh my God." I'm like, I can ask. By this time, our whole staff loves this mom and dad. Initially, we were like, oh my gosh, they're so unwell.
Yeah.
And now we all like love, 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 love them. And I was like, I can call Department of Child Safety and see if the foster mom will meet you. But I said, I've never seen that in the hospital. And so I call the foster mom. The foster mom says no. And 2 hours later, she calls back and she goes, I would really like to meet her. Uh-huh. So she comes to the hospital the night before he's supposed to be discharged, or the hospital comes to Hushabye the night before he's going to be discharged, and mom and dad and foster mom bring their little man out to our little lounge area, and they're teaching the foster mom what he likes, what he doesn't like. I've never seen this ever in 25 years in the neonatal intensive care unit. No biological mom is meeting a foster mom. There is no way. And so the next day, mom is well, dad is still struggling. And mom says she will go to treatment because she knows she needs to go to treatment, but she wasn't going to go unless dad went first and that he got in. And so they were going to the same place, one men, one women, but going to the same place. And so we put dad in an Uber. He gets there, the community partner calls us and says, yep, he's here. He's not leaving. He's doing his intake. He's ready to roll. We're like, okay. So we tell mom, okay, he's there. We're ready. So we get an Uber for her. We put baby in the car seat, put baby in the foster mom's vehicle, and the foster mom and the Uber are both vehicles are like side by side. And the foster mom goes over to the mom who's in the Uber and says, get out. And all of us that had cared for him were in tears because they were like, oh my gosh, we're so proud of this family and this baby and everything. And we're watching this all go down. And the foster mom goes to the mom. She's like, get out. And the mom's like, what? And she goes, get out. And so she gets out of her car, and the foster mom just grabs her and hugs her and is like, go get well. I have your baby. Go get well.
Oh,
And it took 9 months for them to get reunified because 3 severances. They completed treatment, but they were homeless. So we had to find housing. We had to find they had to work. We had to do all these things. So they get reunified, and that foster mom is now a babysitter to their baby, and they've since had another planned pregnancy, mom completely well, and another baby.
oh
So, and
gosh.
she's reunified with her other three. They let her see her other three. She's not raising the other three, but that family system has opened. When I ask her, how is this different than with the other three? And she goes, with the other three, I got to visit for 30 minutes every day. And usually with security had to be there. So I think she used on site. And I'm like, well, that's what happens if you use on site. And so security would have to be there. And she said every day at 30 minutes, they were like, okay, I need to leave. And every day I left my babies crying. And she said it seemed like they were better off without me. And so with this little man, she goes, oh, I bonded with him. And I knew that I had to get well. And when they were in treatment, both dad and mom made it's almost like a little jewelry box, and it says their baby's name saved us. And it's like, oh, he really did. And look what you do. So that's something that you would never see in our neonatal intensive care units because it was about the baby but it truly was about the family system because the baby needs its family.
Yeah. Yeah.
So,
I got goosebumps, and I'm not gonna lie, I have a little bit of a tear in my eye because that's wow. What
yeah,
a story.
yeah,
Um, are you in contact with her still to this day?
I am. I get pictures pretty much. I would say probably every other week.
I love it.
She'll send me pictures. Her little man is now, he's 4. And so the bus comes and picks him up and he gets on the bus and she'll send videos. And then she has her other one that is, we're close to a year. And she'll send videos of them. So I'm a little too close to her. I broke the rules and I always break the rules. But I'm so proud of them.
Yeah.
And to see it where you go, initially I was, when they walked in the door, I remember meeting her first, and she was definitely not just under the influence of an opiate, but there was other stuff.
Yeah.
And I didn't say it, but in my head, I went, oh God, this is going to be a long time.
Yeah.
This is going to be a long visit. And then now getting to know her, and I honestly think she's probably brilliant. I bet her IQ is so high. And she's just funny. With her second baby, I forgot that she was so OCD and really does have that. And I was like, when she came with her second baby, she was getting the baby's bedding and everything right. And I was like, oh my gosh, I forgot about you. I said, I really need you to go down in the basement of Hushabye and get that organized. Oh, I get a text all the time. Have you cleaned it up down there? Because if not, I need to come and clean it up. She's not even seen it, but the fact that I said it, she wants to like fix it. And I'm like, oh my gosh, we do need to work on your OCD a little bit. But great mom.
Yeah.
She's a fabulous mom. She knows that one time that there was an oopsie, she called us. And yes, we ended up calling Department of Child Safety together. Yes, foster mom stepped in a little bit and we added more services, but babies didn't get removed. It was
Right.
just how can we make sure that they're safe? And I think at that time, I think actually foster mom stepped in and then grandma came into town and she stayed with them.
I love it.
And it was like there are oopsies.
Yeah. Yeah. And you
So
gave her so much grace, saying that you were proud of her for taking care of her little man in the middle of the night. Like I would have to think that had a really big impact on her. So I mean that's an incredible, incredible story. How do you feel Hushabye has evolved since its inception?
well, initially it was baby focused. That was it. When you look at our outcomes, so when we first started, the national average for a baby to go through that withdrawal process in the literature is 22 days. So 22 days, worst flu and migraine times 100. I always try telling people, can you imagine knowing that 22 days you're going to not feel well? Um, we have been able to cut that back. We're 8 days is our average length of stay.
Yeah.
And we look at readmissions to see, like, did we send them home too soon? Was there anything there? And we're not. We've had 2 babies come back to us. Both babies were looked really good. They stayed with us for 48 hours because we were like, the caregiver needed a break. It was the energy of the caregiver. It was a grandma and an auntie. And they weren't prepared. They didn't know what they were going to have to do, and baby could feel it, the nerves. Um, so that number one, uh, I've learned that it's not all about the baby. It is about the baby, but it's the dyad or the triad, the mom, dad, and baby, whatever that looks like. Um, that was not what the mission was. The mission initially was to just save the babies, and now it really is, save the families. I didn't think that we'd have the impact that we would on decreasing the amount of babies going to foster care. If our families connect with us prenatally, only 2 out of 10 go to foster care.
Wow.
2.
Wow.
And that's because we're able to work with the families. We're able to work with mom and dad, get them well. But for those moms and dads that we're not well yet, we're working with grandmas and grandpas, aunts and uncles. Who else do you have that can help you raise your baby while you get well? We're doing all of that work. And then we've built a really good foundation with Department of Child Safety that they trust us. And so we're able to talk with them and be like, this is what we know is going on. This is what they need. What other resources can you help them with the ultimate goal of healthy mom, healthy baby, healthy dad too. And as long as it's safe, family unification. And initially, when we started it, family unification wasn't on our radar. I mean, it really wasn't. But learning about adverse childhood experiences, that really tipped it over the edge and me going, okay, so if I don't help this family get well right now, this baby, when it's 16, is probably going to be pregnant, struggling with substance use, and it's just going to be generational cycle of addiction and trauma and all the above. So I think learning that, but we've served almost 940 babies in less than 5 years. Um, we're working with 112 pregnant women right now. 30 of those are due in the next 30 days. When you look at those numbers, you go, I didn't think it would be that many babies, that many families impacted. And when I say 112, next week it will probably be 108, and then it goes to 117. And we hang right around that 110 mark continuously. And so our data of our length of stay, our cost of care is 25% of the hospital, and 95% of our babies are on Medicaid. So when you look at the cost savings to our community, um, we're the gold standard for care.
Yeah,
Uh, I think those are my biggies. I was not prepared for the barriers for us to be able to serve the babies.
right.
Um, it has been a challenge to really build partnerships with our hospital systems and providers um, to be able to get babies to us. We can work with parents. We can, have them prepared, and the parents can ask for their baby to be transferred, but that is not always honored.
Right.
Um, that's addiction, that's stigma, that's, you know, people not understanding trauma-informed care.
Yeah.
Um, I figured by 4 years we would be further than where we're at.
Right. I was going to ask you what you feel the biggest challenge is. So it's the healthcare system, I guess, is kind of
Yeah,
preventing you guys from progressing further than you guys are, right?
yeah, it really is. And you kind of today we have four babies that we're trying to get to us today, and we got one. And my outreach team is just, I'm like, just keep going, you guys. You're doing good work, but they're a little crushed right at the moment. I'm like, just keep doing. You know what you have to do, and it's calling the hospitals, being as nice as you possibly can, helping the families advocate for themselves when they're not used to be advocating,
Yeah.
trying to keep them, there's a very fine line of families going, if I push the issue and they say something to Department of Child Safety, maybe it's just better I just stay at the hospital.
Hmm.
And it's like, okay, but that could be 22 days of your baby going through withdrawal versus 8.
Yeah.
What do you see there? And so there's just been that you go, we as healthcare providers, we went into healthcare to make a difference. And I think sometimes we stray and don't really understand or are not willing to learn and open our minds to these babies need their families.
Yeah.
And it is not for us to judge if that family gets to raise their baby.
Right. So what does that conversation look like with those hospitals? I mean, like, I'm assuming it's because you're not in their quote unquote system is why that's such a barrier. What does
Mhm.
that conversation look like for you guys?
Yeah, it's very touchy.
Mm.
If the hospitals are busy, we're busy. They
Yeah.
will send us every baby. It's the best idea in the world to send the baby to us. If they're slow, then it kind of depends on the doctor, kind of
Mm.
depends on, maybe a case manager. Um, When we talk with administration, they'll be like, oh my goodness, I totally think this is a good thing. They kind of will, providers will be like, administration says this, administration will say it's the providers. You never know. And so it's really being on a little tightrope of how much can you push and challenge without completely offending.
Yeah.
And we haven't learned that yet.
As I said, that stigma is probably a really big part of that too.
Yeah, yeah. And we do training. We've had 5 hospitals that have let us come in and do training specifically on trauma-informed care. And it helps for a little while. And you go, okay, now we're getting, the care coordination, everybody's on the same page, but there's turnover. It just doesn't stay there.
Yeah.
And you go, okay. Depends on leadership, depends on bottom line. And we just keep going, you know what? I tell my staff today, me telling them, I'm like, you guys are doing great work. Every baby's worth it. Every one of these families is worth it. Just keep doing what we can do, and we'll celebrate the ones that we get, and the other ones we can support from afar. Not
Right.
as well,
Right.
but we can support them from afar.
Yeah. And it's disheartening to hear that there isn't a stronger support for you guys because you guys do such great things for the community. And it's like, I get the healthcare system thing. I understand that tightrope, but that tightrope shouldn't be a tightrope. It should be a bridge. It should
Yeah.
be, you guys working hand in hand with each other. And I feel like it's like that in all avenues of this kind of work, whether it's healthcare, whether it's mental health, I
Yeah.
remember, um, coming back out down here to Florida. I lived in Jersey for like a year and just didn't have a great experience there. And I moved back down here. And I had a therapist who I only had 2 sessions with, and by the second session, she was already pushing pills on me. And I'm like, listen, like I'm super against pills. Like I don't want pills in any capacity, and that's due to my childhood. I watched
Exactly.
addicts destroy themselves, and her response, she just kind of gave me like the "Are you stupid?" look, and says, "Well, if you had high blood pressure, you would take medicine, would you? Wouldn't you?" I said, "Well, yeah, it's for my health." And then she just gave me a look. Well, this is for your health. And it's like, but I feel like you're not even trying to have a conversation with me, and like you're just
Yeah.
writing stuff down and trying to get that prescription. You know what I mean?
Yeah. Yeah.
I almost gave up, and thank God for the therapist I have now because I'm a huge advocate for finding the solution of problems instead of just trying to solve a symptom. And I
Yeah.
feel,
Totally. Yeah.
yeah, and
Yeah.
and I feel like I wish it was like that in the healthcare system too, because it's like, oh well, we can get them better for a whole week, but they're probably going to come back anyway, so let's write them a script, and it's so frustrating.
Yeah, it is. And really doing that like patient-centered care or family-centered care of of you and your provider coming to a treatment plan, not this is your treatment plan, you're going to take this prescription, this is what you're going to do. Um, that's what everyone deserves. And it needs to come from, yeah, as a provider, you can say, these are the recommendations. This is what I would do. And this is why, like you have to explain it so that people know where you're coming from. I do that with babies all the time when I tell families, your little one's at this stage. If this is why I think we should give a dose of morphine, this is what I'm seeing, blah, 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 blah. But could we try, put your baby in a swaddle bath? Could we try making it completely dark in here? Could we try one more feeding and see if we can get them over the hump? Could we do skin to skin? Let's try. And working with the families, being able to keep the families from escalating,
Yeah,
that escalation goes off to the babies.
right.
If I can keep the families like mellow and okay, the baby feels it. And it's a matter of having those conversations, sitting down with them, not standing up. You always have to be, I always tell my staff, I'm like, you need to be at the level of them or lower when you're talking with them. No matter what, don't be standing and talking down to them. That is not the same thing. And when you do that, it just all around, it's a better, it may take a while to do it, but believe me, it makes your day way better.
Yeah.
It may
Yeah.
take an extra 15 minutes at the front end, but in the back end, you have everybody on board.
So-
Everybody's rowing the same way.
right. Right. Can you explain the eat, sleep, console care protocol, and its impact on infants with NAS?
Yeah. So in the hospital for years, I mean, still, we do an assessment on what does it look like for a baby to withdraw and when do you need to provide medication and what's that treatment plan. And in the hospital, it's a 20 plus point question, and you do it every 3 hours, and it's very, very subjective. So you could do it and get a score of 25. I do it on the same baby and I get a score of 4. Um, about 5 years ago, Dr. Grossman in out of California um, came up with Eat, Sleep, and Console. He's like, can they eat, can they sleep, and can they be consoled? If they can do those three things, then do we need to give them medication? I don't really think we do. If they can eat and sleep and be consoled, we just let them do it. And so we transitioned to that model. We still do that 20 plus point scale one time a shift for us to just have a baseline and go, okay, where is the baby? What does it look like? Because I don't want to send a baby home that can eat, sleep, and console, but they're scoring a 20, and I really do think they're scoring a 20. It just gives us another added uh, assessment for us to look at. The eat, sleep, and console, though, is objective. It's not subjective at all. They either took an ounce or they didn't. You can count how long they slept. That's very easy to do. And what we find is that we don't need to give that much morphine. If families come to us before they've been started on morphine in the hospital, so they haven't been treated, only 8% of our babies get even a dose of morphine. In the hospital, 95% of our babies, when they come to the NICU, we're starting morphine. Now, there are some hospitals that are doing Eat, Sleep, and Console, but the care model for Eat, Sleep, and Console, the way that it was written in the initial study was for the primary caregiver to be well. So that means they're either treated with Suboxone or methadone, but anyone else that has an abnormal drug screen, their baby can't do Eat, Sleep, and Console. At Hushabye, we're able to do Eat, Sleep, and Console with every single baby because I have one-to-one caregivers. I have someone that can do everything that that baby needs while mom's sleeping in the bed. So if mom is struggling with fentanyl, we know that she's under the influence at that moment. I'm telling mom, go night night. I have Narcan in every room. All of my staff, every volunteer knows how to give Narcan. I want that mom in that bed. The magic that's working on the brain, the development of that brain, just by mom being in the same room with this baby is something that we can't do. I mean, it is biology and it's done without any interaction. And so we want mom and dad there. But when mom and dad wake up, my caregiver's holding baby as much as they need to. But when that mom and dad wake up, I call my peer supports and I'm like, get in there and go tell your story. Go see if they're ready. Congratulate them, see what they're up for, let them know that their baby's doing good and that their baby slept well because they were there and they were present. And we do that over and over and over until we get I think I can do it. And sometimes that I think I can do it isn't until the night before rights are going to be severed. And sometimes it's that. And it's like, okay, we have we have 12 hours to figure out what we're going to do to get you to the hearing so that we can see if they will not sever your rights and show that we're getting you into treatment and all the things.
Right.
So,
Yeah, and I think it's super important, I guess, to make sure that they feel supported the entire time, right? And especially when it comes to getting to that hearing and seeing if those rights are going to be severed. And I couldn't imagine what that conversation looks like because I'm sure that's not easy for you guys to have that conversation with them. Like, yeah,
mhm,
you're not going to be able to get your baby back, and it's like, fortunately, you need that healthy mom or healthy parents to be there, and that's not always the case, unfortunately.
yeah.
How can people get involved or support the mission of Hushabye Nursery?
Um, Our website, it's www.hushabyenursery.org. Get on there, share this podcast. Number one, that's the easy one. Get on our website, just watch our videos, fall in love with what we do. We have a YouTube channel that is a whole bunch of testimonials, but then how to care for a baby. If there's anyone that you know that's pregnant or parenting that struggles with opiate use disorder, have them connect with us. And then if you do have the means and your heart feels it, we are a nonprofit. We have to raise about $3 million a year to keep the doors open. And I will take your donations happily. We do have an Amazon wish list online. If you want to just purchase something and have it's sent, that would be great too.
So how does like getting the word out of Hushabye work? Like, do you guys do conferences or anything like that, or is it just
We
kind of like
do. We
word of mouth?
do. Yep. We, social media is probably our biggest outlet. And then we table a lot of conferences. We present. I have a community outreach person. She's usually probably presenting once a week. I probably now I'm down to a couple times a month that I go and present at conferences. She's doing a lot more of it. But if we get invited to present, otherwise we're doing just the tabling and making sure that everybody knows us. We do a lot of like March of Dimes walks because you have people that are like, "What are you?" We've been up and running for 4+ years, and it's interesting that people are still like, "I've never heard of you." I'm like, seriously? We are on the news. We're all of these things, and you still haven't heard about us. So I think that's one of our, longtime goals of if people have someone that's struggling, our goal would be that everybody in the future will know, oh yeah, Hushby, that's your referral. Knowing that no matter what, if you have a premature baby, March of Dimes. I like that. We need substance use Hushabye, and let us help them. So someday,
Yeah,
goals.
yeah, one day at a time. It's great what you're doing. Are you on both Facebook and Instagram?
We
Hushabye?
are. Yep, yep.
Awesome.
Facebook, Instagram, YouTube, and TikTok. If TikTok's still going, is it
Yeah,
still going? I should know,
yeah.
but
I
I don't.
believe they just added it back to the stores.
Okay, then we still are on that too. I should know that part, but I don't. Um, yeah, so we're on all of the outlets, and our social media is cute. It's really easy to make babies cute and enticing. So, and we have so many families that are willing to share their story and willing to share their babies. When I first started, if you go way back on our social media, I wouldn't even let a baby be on social media because I felt like I was exploiting it,
Right.
or and the parents are like, oh my gosh, no, I want to share what we've done and how we've succeeded and what you guys have helped us with. Completely opposite. And now I'm like, okay, I've heard this so many times. We always get consent
Yeah.
for them, but
Sure.
they want to share. They want people to get well.
Love it.
Yeah.
So I ask all my guests this before we close out. If you could change one thing in the mental health community, what would it be?
Stigma.
Stigma. Absolutely. Couldn't agree more.
That was
Uh,
really quick, huh?
yeah. So at the end of every podcast, I'd like to read a quote, mental health related or just about the subject at hand. If you have a quote you want to read to the listeners, feel free, no pressure.
I'm gonna say love heals.
I agree. I agree so much. Just hearing that story earlier about that the mom and the foster mom just hugging, and then her complete comeback story was just beautiful. Stuff like that is why this whole podcast and everything is worth it. I love hearing all these different stories. So thank you so much for sharing everything with us.
Yeah, thank you. I
Um, so
appreciate
today's quote comes from Jack Ma. I hope I'm saying that last name right. It reads, "Never give up. Today is hard. Tomorrow will be worse, but the day after, tomorrow will be sunshine."
Oh, I love that. I
Um,
love it.
for all my listeners, thank you guys so much for your support. And Tara, thank you again so much for coming on. This has been a very enlightening podcast. I think what you're doing is really important, and I hope to see more growth because you guys are killing it. So thank you again for coming on.
Thank you. I so appreciate it. Have a good night.
Yeah, and for all my listeners, thank you guys for tuning in. Until next time, much love, and as always, be gentle with yourselves. Take care.